Hello everyone. Today I'm having fun. Right now, I just happened to buy pears over the weekend. Look at these. Aren't they gorgeous? And this is actually my last one. I thought, oh my gosh, I have to paint it. So I thought we would just do that. And it'll be kind of fun to do a wet and wet. I might even do a little glazing at the end. So I'm not even really going to draw this out. I'm just going to go into, and I'm using 140-pound cold press. I've got my wash and rinse water and my Mylang paints, which I have already given a little spritz to, so they're damp and activated. And then I put a little bit into my palette here. So feel free today to use this Degato set. There's a whole set of these for like $10, and I have had these for several years. If you take care of your brushes, they are going to love you back. So that just happens to be what I'm using. Somebody emailed me recently too and said they got them for like $10. And, if you're not quite ready to make that jump into your Princetons and such, these are a great little brush. They're quite snappy, but yet soft. So, all right, I'm just wetting my brush. If I was to hold it up, it's not going to drip. That's perfect wetness for me. And I think for a beginner, going too wet is always a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to go into my cad yellow here. And I've actually got some on this large palette next to me as well. And let's just go in here. Maybe I will actually use this palette because I can do a little bit of mixing. So I've got the cad yellow, but then I've got just a bit of that yellow sienna there. Ooh, isn't that a perfect pear color? I think so. All right, so I go in there. I've got about 50-50. I'm going to add just a tad more water. Tap, tap, tap. Look at all the paint that came off. And now let's get a general form of our wonderful pear here. Let me see. Hold on 1 second. Let me grab something. Okay. So it's a little bit flat at the top. I'm going to use the tip of my brush, resting my hand on its side here and point, and then I have my brush pointed to about 3 o'clock. I'm just going to come out, wrap it around, and now I'm going to get my brush wet and start kind of moving that around. I'm leaving a bit of white space on this side. There we go. And I've got my little pear there. Okay, while that is still damp, I rinse my brush. I'm going to go into some of that beautiful sienna color. And just a little bit, tap, 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 to get some of that extra off. And I'm going to start adding in some color. I'm putting this in rather randomly because I'm trusting that the watercolors are going to do most of the mixing and perfect blending for me. So look at that. Now up here, I might add in just a tiny bit of green. Let me use this palette so you can see what I'm doing. So we've got some green here. Just gonna tap in a little bit of that up there, maybe a tiny bit here. Look how pretty that is. I know this looks a little wonky over here, so we can fix that a bit. Let's go into our original yellow. And you can add in just a tiny bit to kind of form that. Even over here, my pear is quite fat. And I feel like I even want a tad bit of a warm red, which is like this, maybe this Merlot with a tiny bit of the sienna in there. So about 50 water, 50 pigment, and it moves rather well. Tap, tap, tap. And now I'll tap in some of that. Just along this edge over here. As if the light's coming this way and I've got that shadow over there. Just like that. Just using very light pressure at the tip of my brush. Now I'm going to go in for my stem. So I'll grab some of that brown, which mine didn't have a stem, by the way. But we're going to give this little guy a stem. I might even tap in some of that brown around the edges like this. Maybe some little dots, because I noticed my pear does have dots on it. So I'm just using the lightest tapping to add some beautiful color in there and little dots. Yeah, I like that. We can darken up that other side with a little bit of brown, a little bit of red, and go along that edge one more time. Just to darken that up and then let it spread. Okay, how about a leaf? So we'll take this and our dark green. Actually, I can spin this around to my green. There we go. Loving this palette. And let's create a little branch coming out. So let's say we got a leaf coming out right there. How's that? Rinse off my brush and tap it off on some paper towel here. Whoop. See how much water came off there? And now I can create a little leaf. I've just got water on my brush. Let's make it an interesting leaf, shall we? Oh, look at that. Isn't that fun? Oh, I love it. So there's our first leaf. Let's make another one coming out over here, or even down here, but I feel like we need some weight over here. So just really light, thin stroke. All I'm using is the tip of my brush. Rinse my brush, tap it off, and now we're going to create that wiggly leaf over here. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And barely some paint on the tip of our brush. And look how beautiful that is. Maybe we have just a teeny tiny leaf here. Like that. Just for some fun interest. We could even tap in a tiny bit of brown there. Ooh, I love this, how it did that. Okay. Now for the last thing I want to show you here is, because this basically, I feel pretty good about this. I added definitely some more color there, but I like this. I'm going to dry this just for a quick second. Oh, I love those leaves. I want to make sure this is good and dry. And then I want to show you this. This is going to be like a glaze. So this is dry, hopefully. It's pretty dry. Getting my brush wet, but not too wet. I scraped it off and tap it off a bit. And then I'm going to go in and pick up a really light version of that beautiful reddish brownish. And maybe even some of that. And I'm just going to do a light transparent glaze over this side. So point, press, and I'm not going to keep going in and playing with that. I just wanted to add a touch of color over there. Maybe some right here. And now I leave it. And look at that. So I could do one more glaze like that with a little bit of the brown and a little bit of that red, and just giving it a hint. And that glaze still lets the yellow come through from below. And now after all that, you could even actually do some lifting. Look at that. I can even lift a little bit of color. But what I want to do now is just a couple little splatterings of brown for some of that brown splatter. So I'll go into my brown here, tap, 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 and I'm trying to be careful because I don't want it to go all over. There we go. And that's it. All right, everybody, I hope you give this a try. So much fun. Pick a piece of fruit, have fun with it, try and match the colors. And I will see you all soon. I hope to see your paintings over on Patreon. Remember, I'll be right here, and you are an artist.